Eric Ray Wenberg was born December 31st, 1945, to parents Albert Edwin Norman Wenberg and Florence Margaret Wenberg. In his late teens, Wenberg would join the Australian National Socialist Party. By 1967, the leader of the party, Arthur Smith, would resign as the leader, leaving Eric Wenberg as his successor. Wenberg would merge the Australian National Socialist Party and the National Socialist Party of Australia into one party. Wenberg was a fan of the American Nazi Party leader George Lincoln Rockwell and ran the Australian Party on Rockwell's model. Wenberg would travel to the United States on a tourist visa via Canada. Wenberg's address for the visa was the American Nazi Party barracks. He would take a job at a local restaurant. His reason for the job was, quote, "because I realized there were people fighting the corrupt system of government here." But not long after Wenberg's arrival, tragedy struck. Commander George Lincoln Rockwell was assassinated by a former party member by the name of John Patler. Wenberg took the assassination harder than most of the party. When John Patler would go for one of his first hearings on April 28, 1967, Wenberg would make an attempt to assault John Patler, and Wenberg would be apprehended by 6 police officers. He would make his motive known, screaming, "Patler, you filthy assassin, you filthy swine." While being carried out, Wenberg would be heard shouting, "Long live the American Nazi Party." This incident would create great legal trouble for Wenberg, first receiving 10 days in jail and a $50 fine for contempt of court. This outburst also brought heavy scrutiny to his visa and his activities, and the court would soon realize that Wenberg was illegally working on a tourist visa. The court would set a $5,000 bond for Wenberg as he was serving his 10 days. The American Nazi Party would say this is too high. They requested a $500 bond to be considered. Party spokesperson, Lieutenant Frank Draeger, would also give a statement to the Freelance Star saying that Wenberg was on a hunger strike while in custody. Draeger would say, "The man seems seriously ill to me. It is important he be released as soon as possible." While serving the 10 days, the American Nazi Party would demand that Wenberg be released from custody because he was, quote, "receiving death threats from Negro inmates." On September 6, 1967, Wenberg would be scheduled for deportation. At the deportation, Wenberg would say he didn't know that working was illegal, before giving the judge a Roman salute. On January 7th, Wenberg would attempt to enter Canada on a Greyhound bus from Buffalo to Toronto. Canadian Nazi leader and party members awaited his arrival. While trying to cross the border on the bus, he would be denied entry into Canada, and he was taken into custody. Wenberg's reason for entering Canada was to join the Canadian Nazi Party leader John Beatty on a speaking tour. Beatty would attempt to fight the decision to block Wenberg's entry into Canada. However, Beatty would withdraw the appeal when the court allowed alleged confessions into the official transcripts. Beatty would tell the news that Wenberg had reached an agreement with the United States authorities to leave the country quietly. Wenberg would be turned over to the United States, where they would deport him back to Australia, where his party members waited to greet him in the Sydney airport in full party uniform. While back in Australia, Wenberg would organize rallies similar to the ones that Rockwell had done years prior. One of the first rallies was in Brisbane, where they would meet heavy resistance. Greatly outnumbered by counter-protesters, the police allowed the Nazi Party members to be beaten up before they'd finally pull them out. While the crowd was being dispersed, Wenberg would yell at the crowd, "That is typical of you filthy Jews." Wenberg would be quoted as saying, "Gallings, deportations, or beatings will not stop us from achieving our goal." Deputy A.A. Goldberg would give a statement on the rally saying, "It is believed that Eric Wenberg, the leader of the party in Queensland, organized the meeting in order to rejuvenate National Socialists in Australia after his counterparts suffered setbacks in both Sydney and Melbourne. The Brisbane Jewish community is quite alert to the dangers of a man like Wenberg organizing meetings, especially directed against the Jewish community, as one of the main aims of his platform announced before the meeting was, quote, deportation to Israel of all Jews in Australia who could not prove they had contributed in some way to the welfare, both social and financial, of the country. Wenberg was insistent that they were not out to break the law. and they wanted to achieve power through legal means, saying, quote, "We want legal power through the ballot box. Then we will join all the white countries throughout the world and isolate all the colored areas." On February 17th, 1968, at 9:15 a.m., acting on a tip from a confidential informant, Wenberg would be stopped at the Roma Street Railway. In his briefcase, the police would find a .25 caliber automatic pistol wrapped in an armband with a swastika. Wenberg insisted that the police planted the firearm in his briefcase. When asked if he had a license for the pistol, he would say, "How could I get a license? I have just been deported from the United States." In 1970, Wenberg would be fired from his job, alleging that it was for his political beliefs. Wenberg would leave Australia again, meeting National Socialists in different countries. He would sneak into West Germany looking for Nazi artifacts. He would go through Europe where he'd be recognized by authorities in multiple European countries. But Wenberg was being heavily pursued by the Yugoslav secret police for his alleged involvement in bombing the flight JAT 367. There was never a proven connection showing Wenberg in the bombing of the plane. Initially, Swedish authorities received a call from a man claiming responsibility for the bombing and saying he was a member of the Ustasha. Wenberg allegedly had ties to the Ustasha, but the bombing was not proven to be the actions of the Ustasha nor Wenberg. There's still to this day no 100% confirmation on what happened to the flight. Reports state it was shot down by mistake by the Czechoslovakian fighter jets or by a surface-to-air missile. The bombing idea could have been forged by the Czechoslovakian secret police to hide what had happened and saw a way to blame the Ustasha.
The following morning, the Swedish newspaper Kvällsposten received an anonymous call. A man explained in bad Swedish that he was a Croat and a member of the Ustasha, which was an ultra-nationalistic organization. He claimed responsibility for the bombing of the DC-9. At 4:01 p.m., an explosion tore through the DC-9's baggage compartment. The explosion caused the aircraft to break apart over the Czechoslovakian village of Srpska. The explosion was extremely powerful, and aircraft parts were scattered all over the ground. And the discussion about different aspects of the crash was reopened on the 8th of January 2009, when a German news magazine featured the report. Allegedly based on newly obtained documents mainly from the Czech Aviation Authority, they concluded that it was extremely likely that the plane had been mistaken and shot down only a few hundred meters above the ground by MiG fighters of the Czechoslovakian Air Force, having been mistaken by an enemy aircraft while attempting to force landing. All the evidence that the plane had been destroyed at high altitude by explosives placed in the suitcase would therefore have been forged by the Czechoslovakian secret police.
Wenberg would avoid capture in Europe before he would make his way to Rhodesia. Not long after he would be in Rhodesia, on January 23, 1972, at the age of 26, Eric Ray Wenberg would be found dead in the wreckage of a car crash. Wenberg's body would be allegedly found with 25,000 USD